It began with a scream, small but sharp, slicing through the early morning calm like lightning. 8-year-old Lila Carter had been picking wildflowers when she saw something that froze her in place. A man in a sharp navy suit, unconscious beneath the oak tree in their yard. His face was pale, his chest barely moving. Lila's twin sister, Harper, rushed over as Lila whispered, "I think he's hurt, maybe even dying." Their mother, Renee Carter, was making breakfast when the girls burst inside, breathless and scared. Expecting perhaps a drunk neighbor, Renee stepped outside and froze. The man, lying on her lawn, looked like he belonged in a boardroom, not a working-class neighborhood. Everything from his tailored suit to his gold watch screamed wealth. And yet, here he was, collapsed in her front yard with no explanation. When 911 said it would take hours to send help, Renee had a choice. Turn away or take action. Guided by the very compassion she taught her daughters, she pulled him inside with the twins' help and began to care for the stranger. It was the beginning of something none of them could have imagined. A chance encounter that would unravel secrets, challenge assumptions, and ultimately change all of their lives, forever. And it all started with a little girl who chose kindness over fear. The man was still unconscious when Renee Carter and her twin daughters, Lila and Harper, laid him carefully on their worn-out couch. His breathing was shallow, his skin cold, and the small cut on his forehead had dried blood crusted around it. But it wasn't just his condition that troubled Renee. It was the mystery of who he was. Everything about him, from his suit to his shoes, whispered money. He didn't belong in their neighborhood. And yet, here he was, silent, vulnerable, and completely alone. As Renee gently wiped the man's forehead with a warm cloth, Harper stood by, eyes wide, with curiosity. "Mama," she whispered, "what if he's someone important? Like a king or a movie star?" Renee smiled, trying to mask her worry. "Maybe he's just someone who got lost," she said, though even she didn't believe it. The man's wallet had fallen from his pocket while they carried him in. It was made of fine leather and held several black credit cards and a thick wad of $100 bills. There was no ID, no driver's license, only a business card from a high-end law firm with no name on it. Strange, Renee thought. Very strange. That afternoon passed slowly. Renee called her job to say she couldn't come in. She couldn't leave her daughters alone with an unconscious stranger, no matter how kind he appeared. As hours ticked by, the girls whispered theories while watching over the man. Lila thought he was a prince from another country. Harper was convinced he was a famous actor hiding from the world. Around noon, a change came. The man stirred, first a twitch of the fingers. Then his eyes began to move beneath the lids. "Mama, he's waking up," Lila whispered. Renee knelt beside the couch, heart pounding. She didn't know what kind of man this was. Criminal? Politician? Stranger in trouble? She just knew her daughters had brought him into their lives with open hearts. His eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, then alert with panic. He sat up too quickly and winced, clutching his head. "Easy," Renee said gently. "You're hurt. You collapsed in my yard. Where am I?" His voice was low, confused. "What happened to me?" "You're safe," she reassured him. "You've been here since this morning. Do you remember anything? Your name?" He pressed his palm to his forehead. "Number nothing. It's blank." His eyes filled with terror. "I don't know who I am." Renee searched his face, looking for signs of deception, but saw only confusion and fear. "We've been calling you Mr. Kind," Harper said from behind her. "Because you seem kind, even if you don't remember." The man gave a weak smile. "Mr. Kind. I like that." For the rest of the afternoon, he rested while Renee and the girls took care of him. The twins brought water, read stories to him from their library books, and bombarded him with questions. Though clearly exhausted, he answered them patiently, with a warmth that surprised Renee. Over dinner's simple peanut butter sandwiches, they sat around the small kitchen table as if he'd always been part of their lives. Mr. Kind listened as the girls talked about school and dreams of becoming dancers and painters. He laughed when they did, nodded thoughtfully when they asked serious questions, and looked at Renee with something like admiration when she spoke about working 3 jobs just to make ends meet. "Why are you helping me?" he asked quietly when the girls were asleep. "You don't know? Me. I could be dangerous," Renee replied. "My grandmother used to say, we're all angels in disguise. Sometimes we help. Sometimes we need help. Today, you needed help." Mr. Kind stared at her, eyes wide with emotion. "You have no idea what that means to me." That night, Renee made him a bed on the couch with her father's old pajamas and her best blanket. Before going to bed, she looked at the man sleeping peacefully in her living room and felt something shift. There was no logic to it, but in her bones, she knew. This man, whoever he was, had entered their lives for a reason. By morning, he was stronger. He helped make pancakes with Lila and Harper, laughing like he'd done it all his life. "My hands remember more than my mind does," he joked. Renee couldn't deny it. He felt like family. But in the back of her mind, she feared the truth, because the mystery still remained. Who was Mr. Kind, really? That question would soon be answered, but not yet. For now, they were just 4 people, brought together by chance and bound by something deeper than memory. Kindness, care, and the unshakable belief that sometimes strangers walk into your life, not by accident, but by fate. The morning air was quiet, but inside Renee Carter's kitchen, her heart thundered. Across the green table sat the man they had come to know as Mr. Kind. Kind, gentle, helpful. But today, something was different. His posture was straighter, his voice more certain, and his eyes, they held a flicker of memory. "Someone called this morning," Renee began, wrapping her hands around a chipped coffee mug. "A lawyer. She said someone named Nathaniel Hayes has been missing for days. She thinks that someone might be you." The man slowly set down his fork. He stared at his hands, breathing deeply, then nodded. "That name. It sounds right. Nathaniel Hayes." He looked up at Renee. "I think that's me." Her heart sank and soared all at once. "You remember?" she asked, cautiously hopeful. "Pieces," he admitted. "Flashes. I remember sitting in an office so tall the windows reflected the clouds. People in suits, waiting for me to speak. I remember pressure meetings, deals, numbers." He paused. "I remember loneliness. Constant, gnawing loneliness." Renee said nothing, letting him find his words. "I think I'm someone important. I don't know everything yet, but I remember being a CEO, wealthy, powerful, respected by everyone, and known by no one." He exhaled heavily. "I think I had it all, and somehow, none of it mattered." The door creaked as Lila and Harper stepped into the kitchen. "Are you okay, Mr. Kind?" Harper asked, blinking sleep from her eyes. Nathaniel gave a soft smile. "I think I might be starting to remember who I am." "You're still Mr. Kind, right?" Lila asked, already climbing onto a chair beside him. "Always," he said. "That name came from the best 2 girls I've ever met. I'll keep it." The girls beamed, and Renee fought the lump in her throat. She had known on some intuitive level that this man was someone powerful, but now the truth was catching up, and with it came the possibility that he might leave. Later that morning, Nathaniel made 3 phone calls. Renee sat beside him during each one. The first was to Patricia Wells, the lawyer who had called earlier. "I'm alive," he told her, calmly. "I've been safe, cared for, by a family who treated me like a human being, not a corporation." "Yes, Patricia," he added, I know the board is worried. They can wait. The second call was to Richard, his assistant. I'm delegating more. I want you to oversee the Anderson merger. No, I won't be in the office. I'm taking time to reassess priorities. The third call was to his doctor. Severe stress reaction, he said after hanging up. My body and mind shut down from years of pushing too hard. The amnesia. It wasn't just medical. It was a warning. Renee didn't know what to say. All she could think was, he's going back to his life, and we're not part of it. I know what you're thinking, Nathaniel said gently, that this is the end of our little miracle, isn't it? She whispered. No, he said, because now that I remember the life I had, I'm even more certain I don't want to return to it the same way. He took her hand. These past days, living here with you and the girls, they've been the first time in years I've felt peace, joy, love. Renee pulled her hand back slightly. You say that now. But when you're back in your penthouse, running a billion-dollar company, I won't be, he interrupted. I don't want that life, not in the way I lived it before. Renee stared at him, her voice trembling. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to stay. Not as a stranger with a forgotten name, but as Nathaniel Hayes, the man who knows exactly what he's giving up and what he's choosing instead. The kitchen was silent, save for the twins arguing over pancake syrup in the background. You want to live here? Renee asked, stunned. I want to live a life that means something, he replied. And that life, for me, starts with you. The girls burst in with syrup-covered smiles, interrupting the weight of the moment. Nathaniel knelt beside them, pulling them both into a hug. Hey, how would you feel if Mr. Kind stayed with us a little longer? You're staying forever, right? Harper asked. Because you still have to help us finish our puzzle. And I have to show you my art project, Lila chimed in. Nathaniel looked at Renee, waiting. She nodded slowly, heart pounding. Then yes, he said, I'm staying. That night, as they sat together under a blanket on the couch, Lila reading aloud, and Harper fast asleep, Renee leaned against Nathaniel's shoulder. You still don't know everything about yourself, she said softly. True, he replied. But I know enough now to know what matters. She looked up. And what's that? He kissed her forehead and whispered, this, you, them, us. For Nathaniel Hayes, remembering who he was, didn't bring him back to a boardroom, brought him home, and the stranger who had once fallen by an oak tree had found his way, not just to safety, but to love. For days after regaining his memory, Nathaniel Hayes remained in the small, modest home of Renee Carter and her daughters, Lila and Harper. Though he now knew he was the billionaire CEO of Hayes Global, he made no immediate move to return to his penthouse, to his boardroom, to his life of deadlines and profit margins. Instead, he stayed washing dishes, in a faded kitchen, reading bedtime stories on a threadbare couch, and finding joy in things money had never bought him. Renee watched him carefully during those days. She saw the way he helped Lila with her science homework and braided Harper's hair with surprising gentleness. He never acted like the man the media claimed he was. He didn't demand, didn't boast, didn't expect special treatment. He was just Nathaniel, or as the twins still affectionately called him, Mr. Kind. One afternoon, while folding laundry together, Renee finally asked the question that had been circling her mind like a hawk. Why are you still here? Nathaniel paused, holding a tiny pink sock in his hand. Because here is the first place I've felt like a person instead of a brand. But what about your company? Your board? Your responsibilities? He looked at her and smiled. They can wait. I've spent years building empires and neglecting myself. I don't want to go back to that. Not when I found something real here. Renee hesitated. You're not just any man, Nathaniel. Eventually, the world's going to come, knocking. And when it does, he said calmly, I'll answer it on my terms. That night, after the girls had gone to bed, Nathaniel sat with Renee under the stars in the parlor backyard, their fingers barely touching on the porch swing. "I want to help," he said. "Not just you and the girls. I mean people like you, single parents, families working 3 jobs just to survive. You saved me, Renee. Now I want to pay it forward." Renee shook her head slowly. "You don't owe me anything." "Maybe not," he admitted, "but I want to give. And not just out of guilt, out of gratitude." In the days that followed, Nathaniel's actions began to reflect his words. Groceries arrived, weekly always from an anonymous donor. The electric bill was suddenly paid off. A local mechanic fixed Renee's aging car without charge, smiling as he handed back the keys. When Renee confronted Nathaniel about it, he only smiled. Maybe someone's just being kind. One weekend, while cleaning an office building with Renee and the girls, Nathaniel rolled up his sleeves and worked like he had something to prove. He emptied trash bins, scrubbed coffee stains, and even managed to get gum off the bottom of a desk chair. Lila declared him better than a janitor ninja. "You're not above this?" Renee asked, surprised by his dedication. He laughed. "This is the most honest work I've done in years. And at least when I finish cleaning a window, I know I've accomplished something." Renee smiled at him, something warm spreading in her chest. He wasn't just playing poor. He was learning to live fully. Later that evening, after tucking in the girls, Nathaniel sat at the kitchen table with a notepad and a pen. "I have an idea," he said. "What if we started a foundation?" Renee blinked. "A foundation?" "Yes. Something that helps families like yours. Housing support, child care, job training, education. Real support. Not just throwing money at problems, but actually solving them." She stared at him, stunned. "You're serious?" "I've never been more serious," he said. "We could call it the Angel Foundation, after Lila and Harper. They're the reason any of this happened." Tears welled in Renee's eyes. "You really believe in this?" "I believe in you, in them, and in what kindness can do." The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind. With Nathaniel's resources and Renee's lived experience, they laid the groundwork for something extraordinary. Lawyers were hired. Office space was found. A website launched with the tagline, "Kindness isn't charity, it's justice with love." But amidst all the growth, one quiet truth remained. Nathaniel hadn't yet asked Renee how she truly felt about him. Until one night, he did. They were sitting on the front steps, watching the girls chase lightning bugs in the yard. "I know we're from 2 different worlds," he began, "but these last few weeks, I've fallen. For you, Renee, and for the girls. I want to build a life with you." Renee's breath caught. "You don't have to say that just because we helped you." "I'm not," he said. "I'm saying it because I want to be here forever." "I'm scared," she admitted. "Scared of being a headline, of people saying I only wanted your money." Nathaniel reached out, taking her hand. "Let them talk. I know the truth. You saved me when I was nothing but a stranger. You gave me a second chance at life. Not because I was rich, but because you were kind." A week later, he proposed in their kitchen over breakfast, while Harper explained a dream she had about a castle where they all lived happily ever after. Nathaniel dropped to one knee, with a ring he'd been carrying for 2 weeks. "Renee Carter," he said, "will you marry me and make this real family official?" "Yes," she whispered, laughing through her tears. "Yes." Their engagement sparked a new chapter, not just for them but for the community. The Angel Foundation opened its first center, providing support to over 200 families in its first 6 to 3 months. Lila and Harper became local icons, the twin angels who inspired it all. As the media began to catch wind of Nathaniel's transformation, he didn't shy away. He gave interviews not about wealth but about love, about second chances, about how a single mother and her daughters had done more for him than a billion-dollar company ever had. "I used to measure my success in profit," he said in one televised interview. "Now, I measure it in bedtime stories, shared meals, and the look on a child's face when they realize someone believes in them. When asked if he missed his old life, he simply smiled. Not for a second. I didn't lose myself. I found who I was always meant to be. And at the center of it all was Renee, his partner, his equal, his heart. The morning began like any other in the Carter household, with pancakes, mismatched, socks and laughter bubbling from the twins as they shared a dream about living in a castle, with crowns and a golden dog named Pickles. But today, Nathaniel Hayes, once known only as Mr. Kind, moved a little differently. There was a quiet intensity behind his smile as he flipped pancakes in the kitchen. His eyes followed Renee Carter, and every time the twins giggled, something in him softened, deep and real. As Lila and Harper chattered about their castle dream, Harper looked up suddenly and asked, "Mr. Kind, are you going to marry Mama?" The question hung in the air, silencing the sizzle of the stove. Renee froze by the counter. Nathaniel turned, locking eyes with her, and something shifted. Without hesitation, he set brick down the spatula, walked toward her, and right there between the toast and the orange juice, he dropped to one knee. "I've been carrying this for weeks," he said, pulling out a small velvet box, waiting for the right moment. "And this feels like it." He opened the box. Inside was a simple, elegant diamond ring, sparkling not for its size, but for the meaning behind it. "Renee Carter," he said, voice steady, but eyes bright with emotion. "You and your daughters saved my life. You gave me a home, a purpose, and a second chance at love. Will you marry me?" Renee stared down at him, stunned. The twins were already squealing and bouncing. She felt the tears come before the words. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder, laughing. "Yes, yes, yes." Nathaniel slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose and wrapped her in an embrace as the girls tackled them both in a group hug. "We're going to be a real family," Harper shouted. "We already are," Nathaniel said, holding them all tightly. "Now we're just going to make it oficial." Plans began immediately. Renee, never one for grand things, wanted the wedding to be simple, meaningful. "Our backyard," she said. "Twinkling lights, fresh flowers, and the people who matter." Nathaniel agreed. "We don't need a ballroom to make this sacred." Lila and Harper took their roles as flower girls very seriously, spending hours practicing, their walk down the aisle and arguing over who got to carry which basket. Renee's sister flew in to be her maid of honor, and Nathaniel's assistant, Richard, served as best man. When the big day arrived, the modest backyard had been transformed into a haven of love and light. White chairs lined the grass. A small wooden arch stood beneath the oak tree, the same tree where the twins had first found Nathaniel unconscious. And everywhere, there were flowers, laughter, and warmth. Renee wore a simple ivory dress. Her hair was pinned back with sprigs of baby's breath. Nathaniel, in a navy suit that brought out the light in his eyes, stood at the altar waiting, his heart pounding with anticipation. The twins walked down the aisle first, scattering rose petals like little professionals, until Lila tripped on her own excitement and burst into giggles, which set the entire crowd laughing with joy. Then Renee stepped forward, and everything stilled. Nathaniel's breath caught. She was radiant, not because of the dress, but because of the strength, grace, and love she carried in her very being. When they reached the altar, Judge Martinez, the same official who had overseen the adoption paperwork weeks earlier, stood before them. "Before we begin," Nathaniel said, "I have something I'd like to do." He turned to Lila and Harper and pulled 2 small velvet boxes from his pocket. "These are for you," he said, kneeling once more. "Promise rings, to show you that I will always be your dad, not just in name or law, but in every bedtime story, scrape knee, and dance recital." The girls opened the boxes to find delicate silver rings, each engraved with a heart. Their eyes widened, and tears followed. They rushed forward, hugging him tightly. "You're really our daddy now," Harper whispered. "I always was," Nathaniel replied. "Now everyone else knows it too." The ceremony continued, filled with tears and laughter. Vows were exchanged, promises, made not just between bride and groom, but between parents and children. When they were finally pronounced husband and wife, the applause echoed through the trees. The reception was as humble and heartfelt as the ceremony. There were cupcakes instead of a wedding cake, lemonade in mason jars, and music played from a speaker borrowed from the twins' school. But it was perfect. During their first dance, Nathaniel whispered in Renee's ear, "This is the life I never knew I needed." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "And the love I thought I didn't deserve." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Lila climbed onto a chair and announced, "This is the best day of my whole life." The crowd erupted in cheers. That night, as Renee tucked the twins into bed, Harper asked, "Mama, now that you're married, will we live happily ever after?" Renee smiled. "We already are, sweetheart." And as she stepped into her new bedroom, the one she now shared with her husband, Nathaniel pulled her into his arms and said softly, "This isn't the end of our story. It's just the beginning." 6 months had passed since the backyard wedding that united Nathaniel Hayes, once a lost billionaire, with Renee Carter and her twin daughters, Lila and Harper. Their home, once modest and full of struggle, was now filled with warmth, laughter, and the rhythm of a life built on love. And soon, the sound of that life would grow louder. Renee was 6 months pregnant with their first child together. "She's going to love us, right?" Harper asked one morning as she folded a tiny onesie beside her sister. "Of course she will," Renee replied, rubbing her growing belly. "But what if she doesn't love me as much?" Lila said quietly. "Because she's really Daddy's baby?" Nathaniel, who had been assembling the crib nearby, paused. He stood, wiped his hands, and walked over. "Sweetheart," he said, kneeling in front of them, "you and your sister are my babies. Always have been. It doesn't matter where you came from. It matters how much I love you. And I love you both with all my heart." "You promise?" Lila asked, her voice small. "With everything I have," he said, then pulled out 2 tiny boxes. Inside were silver necklaces, with pendants that read Big Sister. The twins gasped with joy and wore them proudly from that day on. Meanwhile, the Angel Foundation, the nonprofit Renee and Nathaniel had started to support struggling single mothers, was flourishing. It now had offices in 3 cities and had helped over 500 families find stable housing, job training, and childcare. One afternoon, as Renee wrapped up a donor meeting, her assistant knocked. "There's someone here to see you. She says you helped her a year ago." Renee walked out to find a young woman named Lisa standing nervously with 2 small children. "I just wanted to thank you," Lisa said, tears brimming. "You helped me when I was sleeping, in my car with my twins. Today, I have a job, an apartment, and my girls are thriving." She handed Renee a framed photo of her family, smiling at a park. "I want you to put this somewhere in your office," Lisa said, "so you remember what your kindness creates." After Lisa left, Renee sat alone for a moment, staring at the photo. She felt the baby move inside her and smiled. It was all real, the ripple effect of kindness, one act at a time. Later that evening, Jonathan walked into the kitchen holding his laptop. "Can I show you something?" He turned the screen toward her. It was a proposal to triple the foundation's budget. "We've been doing well," he said, "but we could be doing more. This won't affect our families' security. We'd be helping hundreds of families a year instead of dozens." Renee blinked at the numbers. "Jonathan, this is millions of dollars. Money that's not being used for anything more important than this," he replied. She reached over and closed the laptop gently. "You amaze me," she said, "not because of your wealth, but because of how deeply you care." That night, they sat on the porch while the twins painted pictures of their soon-to-be baby. Sister in wild colors, pink polka dots and sparkly shoes included. "I never imagined this," Renee whispered. "Neither did I," Jonathan said. "I used to think success was building an empire. But now I know real success is building a family." 3 months later, Gabriel Jonathan Hayes entered the world on a quiet Saturday morning. The delivery was smooth, the hospital warm with excitement, and the waiting room filled with 2 anxious girls bouncing on their feet. When the nurse finally wheeled Renee in, the twins raced over. "He's so small," Harper whispered. "He smells like soap and heaven," Lila added. "Would you like to hold him?" Renee asked. Both nodded eagerly. As they sat beside her, carefully cradling their baby brother, Jonathan whispered, "Welcome home, little man. You have no idea how loved you are already." In the weeks that followed, their home adapted to the beautiful chaos of a newborn. Diaper changes, midnight feedings, and lullabies filled the house. But so did laughter, bedtime, stories, and moments of quiet joy. One afternoon, while coloring near Gabriel's crib, Lila looked up and said, "Mama, I drew our whole family." Renee leaned over. The drawing showed 6 smiling figures. Her, Jonathan, the twins, baby, Gabriel, and a small 7th figure. "Who's this?" Renee asked gently. "That's the new baby," Lila said simply. Renee's eyes widened. "What new baby?" Harper chimed in. "We know, Mama. You have the same happy glow like last time." Sure enough, 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test confirmed it. Another miracle was on the way. The twins screamed with joy. "We're going to be big sisters again." As they gathered in the living room that night, Jonathan held Gabriel in one arm and wrapped the other around Renee. The twins were on either side, giggling about names for the new baby. Less than 3 years ago, Renee had been working 3 jobs and praying for a break. Now, she was surrounded by love, real, enduring, unconditional love. "Mama," Harper asked as she leaned against her, "is this what magic feels like?" Renee looked around at her family, at her husband, the once-lost billionaire who chose them over the world, at the daughters who taught her hope, at the baby sleeping peacefully in her arms. "Yes, baby," she whispered. "This is exactly what magic feels like." It started with an act of compassion, a black single mother opening her door to a stranger. But it ended with something much bigger, a movement that would touch thousands. After marrying Nathaniel Hayes, once a forgotten billionaire, Renee Carter didn't just become a wife, she became a builder of legacy. Together, they expanded the Angel Foundation, transforming it into a national network of support for struggling single parents. They launched a scholarship program called Twin Angels, named after Lila and Harper, the twin girls whose innocent kindness changed everything. The foundation didn't just give money, it offered mentorship, dignity, and hope. Community centers bloomed in underserved neighborhoods. Career training programs lifted families from generational poverty. And every new success story led back to a simple truth. One act of kindness can echo across generations. The story of Renee and Nathaniel wasn't just about love, it was about purpose. It proved that no background is too humble, no person too invisible to spark real change. Their home became more than a place of healing. It became the heart of a movement. And when people asked them what drove it all, Renee simply smiled and said, "We remember what it's like to have nothing. So now, we build everything with love." Sometimes, the greatest wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the lives you touch. True, legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's who you lift while you're here. If this story moved you, leave a comment. What would you build if kindness was your foundation? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story to remind the world. Love builds legacies.